Although it can be inconsistent at times, Dragon Ball Z has some damn good looking episodes. But which are the best of the best? Which are the cream of the crop? On this video, I will present to you the 10 best looking Dragon Ball Z episodes of all time as we go back and look at some of the legendary studios and legendary animators that helped bring this franchise to life and provide so many wonderful memories for so many of us for over 3 decades. Don't forget to push that like button as it does help out the channel, and if you are new here, hit the subscribe button and enable all notifications so you don't miss a single video, and I thank you for 7 years of support. Let's get some things out of the way first. First of all, I want everyone to welcome Forgotten Relics to the Geekdom 101 channel and check out his channel as well. I'll leave a link down below. If you like Dragon Ball art and things about the behind the scenes, that's a great channel to check out as far as the production goes for the animation side of things. Check out Forgotten Relics. Also, this is not a top 10 list. We picked our top 10 favorites, but it's not in any order of preference. He got to pick 5 and I got to pick 5 from Dragon Ball Z. In the future, Forgotten Relics is always welcome to return to cover Dragon Ball, GT, and of course Super. But for right now, let's focus just on the core Dragon Ball Z series. And also we're going in chronological order from the beginning of the series to the end of the series. So we're going to start with the early episodes and end with the Buu Saga. Let's get started first with our honorable mentions.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for the welcome, man. But, of course, yeah, let's get to these honorable mentions. So, in the Buu arc, you have a trio of, like, A-tier episodes, that being 279, 280, and 281. 279, though, was my favorite pick out of them, which I'll, of course, touch on later in the video. But, yeah, that leaves these 2 other amazing episodes, which are very deserving of a mention. So, with 280, it's actually a Toei episode, which is quite rare. For those of you who don't know, for Dragon Ball Z, GT, and the original series, Toei would subcontract multiple studios to handle like the animation side of their episodes, much different to Super. So it typically wouldn't be their own in-house animators working on an episode. So this, again, is something a little different. But with it, you also have some of the top animators from their respective studios, like Toshiyuki Kano from Studio Live or Tadayoshi Yamamuro from Shindo Productions, all on board. So yeah, overall you have an all-star list of animators in this one, and that certainly shows in the final product. With 281, it's a Studio Seigasha episode, a name that you'll probably hear a fair bit in this video, and with a great director like Yoshihiro Ueda on board, you get beautiful colors and effects all blended together with a lot of fun and energetic animation, making it such a good episode. And flicking back a bit, I'll also give a mention to 180, another Seigasha episode. It also marks the conclusion to the battle between Cell and Goku, and the Seigasha team definitely give it a worthy send-off. But yeah, that's it for the honorable mentions.
So we begin our top 10 officially with an episode early in Dragon Ball Z, and that's Dragon Ball Z episode 4. I had it narrowed down between 3 and 4, but Relic kind of convinced me that 4 might be slightly better, but they're both beautiful episodes. This is during the fight with Goku and Piccolo against Raditz. Everything in this episode looks so vibrant and gorgeous, not just the hand-to-hand combat between Raditz and Goku, but also Piccolo charging the Makanko Sappo is illustrated with such class and care that it feels just like a step above other episodes in the series. Let's not forget that the scene where Gohan breaks out of the space pod is so well animated. Just everything about this episode screams quality. Seigasha handles the key animation in this one, featuring Tomokichi Takeuchi and Harashiro Shimanuki, with some in-between frames provided by a young Naoki Tate and Junji Kiyohara, among many others that make up this incredible episode. Go back and watch it and just look at how beautiful it looks. Even though this episode first premiered back in 1989, the truth is that great art is great art, and great art is timeless. The second episode on my list is Dragon Ball Z episode 31, a real classic among fans. all over the world. This is Goku versus Vegeta. This is the infamous Kaioken x4 Kamehameha Gallic Gun beam struggle that we have watched for years, and it still doesn't get old. Just that sequence by itself is Hall of Fame worthy, and I know not a single person can argue that. This animation is handled by Seigasha once again, who did a lot of the early Dragon Ball Z work, and there's a reason as to why I love the early DBZ art style. They were a huge reason, but also even in the original manga, I love the way Toriyama drew this part of the series. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to a team that does not get enough love, and that is Studio Wyeth for doing the backgrounds. No one ever talks about how rich and beautiful the Dragon Ball backgrounds are, and having the sunset with the mountains and everything in these episodes just looks so great. And that's something that I think needs to get more love in the future from art fans and Dragon Ball fans as a whole, is just how great some of the backgrounds look. And this episode shines to me as an outstanding episode and one of the absolute best from the first arc of Z. Now I will pass the baton down south to Forgotten Relics for the next pick.
Okay, yeah, well, my first pick is the classic episode 64. The animation supervisor for this one is the legendary Masaki Sato. He's one of those names that even if you don't follow the animation side of Dragon Ball all that closely, you might have heard. He animated Goku's transformation into a Super Saiyan, so he's had a hand in crafting some big and memorable moments in this franchise, and yeah, this episode is definitely one of them. And also with the role of a supervisor, if you're wondering, an animation supervisor is essentially the quality controller of an episode in terms of its drawings and animation. This is done through what is referred to as corrections, essentially redraws of an animator's drawings, and Sato here is quite strong on corrections. However, in his case, that's nothing but a benefit. But yeah, to Sato's style and why this episode looks so good because of him, Sato would love to draw bold line work which had a great balance of line weight, so it would give a lot of depth to his drawings. His style of shading was also quite detailed, but it was more so his placement of it and the shape design itself which gave a lot of volume to his art. He also had a great understanding of the various planes of the face, so you get a very three-dimensional feeling to his character art. He would also draw a lot of hatching under the neck and around other areas, so you had a very gritty look provided as well. That is a feature that is toned down a bit over time, but it's still very present in this era. So yeah, when all put together, it gives his character art a level of depth that very few other supervisors on the series, and arguably on the franchise at large, has been able to match to this extent. And so with him supervising, you get all those stylistic notes on display for an entire episode, and yeah, it looks absolutely glorious. Easily one of the best looking episodes in this arc, and perhaps one of the best looking episodes in the series, or at least in the top 3. I would even dare say it was movie quality in terms of its character art. Sato really is just that good, and it's kind of a crime he didn't actually supervise more episodes and never really filled this role that much in general. He did do a bit of assistant supervisor work on movie 3, supervised movie 4 alongside Nakatsu, and again, some more assistant work on the first TV special, but that was sort of it, unfortunately. But yeah, now to switching things up and looking at the animation side real quick, there's a good amount of movement to this episode, some really impactful effects work. Hisashi Eguchi scene in particular is great, some nice background animation. There's also a lot of camera shake in his scene, which is probably something he only got away with because Minoru Maeda wasn't present. Apparently Maeda didn't like it or find it necessary. This would also be Eguchi's last episode on Z, sadly. Eguchi had been with the franchise since episode 89 of the original Dragon Ball series, albeit uncredited, and also full credit to DB Animators for identifying him in those early eps. But yeah, this is certainly a great episode to end off on, although he would later return way down the line actually with Resurrection F, but is completely corrected by Yamamuro, sadly. And I guess a final tidbit I'll add is that the storyboard was delayed for this episode, and so Sato had only 3 weeks to handle his portion of Raccoon's fight. Usually animators would be given about 1 to 2 months, and he was supervising as well, so it really, again, speaks to his skill that this episode still looked as good as it did.
My next pick is Dragon Ball Z episode 103. Now, it's no secret that the Frieza saga when it comes to art and animation is quite a bit inconsistent. There are some episodes that look absolutely brilliant and some scenes that are unforgettable, but there's also some stuff that really does look let's just say subpar compared to other parts of the series. And this was the point in Dragon Ball Z where the anime staff was stretched very thin. Heck, Dragon Ball Z Movie 4 had just come out a little while before this, and they were already making Dragon Ball Z Movie 5, and Movie 4 has 3 animation supervisors. So in my research, that's kind of the reason that I discovered, is that the anime staff was being stretched out very thinly. However, amongst all of this, my favorite episode of the Goku vs. Frieza fight is 103. And there's a few good ones too, but this one to me is the best looking one. Goku and Frieza duking it out on planet Namek, explosions everywhere, muscles being ripped, dudes just, doing stuff to each other. Pause. It really makes me wish that the entire Goku vs. Frieza fight was animated like this. Here's a fun fact. This is one of only 2 episodes in the entire series that has a moving title card. You see the smoke in the background moving as you have the text appear. That right there tells you that this is a very special episode. Studio Seigasha was once again in charge of the animation, but this time Naoki Tate was a key animator, not just an in-betweener, and he's joined by Yoko Izuka, Tomekichi Takeuchi, and Masahiro Shimanuki. Guys who are beloved among Dragon Ball fans, and if you watch this episode again, you will remember why.
Now to 120. So 120 is supervised by another superstar from Studio Junyo, and that is Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru. And after actually his work on episode 44, I think it was, apparently the staff at Toei were calling him the next Minoru Maeda. And yeah, looking at his work on this episode, it's not hard to see why. He was one of the best when it came to replicating Toriyama's style, next to Masaki Sato as well, of course. And one trait he brings over from Toriyama's work is highlights, which just dominate this episode. But yeah, Nakatsuru brings a very refined style to the table. He was always leading the way when it came to evolving Dragon Ball's art style. For example, in 103 with the cut of Tien and Yamcha on King Kai's planet, the artwork, especially on Tien, feels like something out of the Cell arc, with the more simplified style of shading in terms of shape design, that is, and just the general roundness to faces and the way he stylizes anatomy. It's quite ahead of its time and would become the standard look down the line, and especially so as he takes on the role of character designer for the Buu arc and GT, but also the Otherworld tournament. That's the little mini filler arc right before the Buu arc. People often forget to mention that one. But getting back to this episode, his corrections are incredibly strong, to the point where he's completely correcting entire poses and layouts. As a result, this episode is very consistent artwork-wise, and which is why it makes it into this list. And lastly, I have to compliment the special effects team. When Frieza chucks the supernova at Trunks, it looks amazing and very distinctive. Alright, so my next pick is episode 152. You have an all-star team assembled. Tadayoshi Yamamuro handles the supervision, with key animators Masaki Sato, Naoki Miyahara, and Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, although uncredited, all making an appearance in the one episode. Of course, Shindo production episodes, thanks to Yamamuro taking over from Shindo, are some of the best in terms of character art, and so again, with these 3 on board as well, it's just like filled with wallpaper-worthy shots the whole way through. A really nice looking episode. The direction is also top-notch, as you have one of the top directors from Z, Yoshihiro Ueda, handling this episode. The way in which he drenches the screen in a variety of color palettes from yellows to greenish blues is quite appealing and striking. Animation-wise, there's nothing that out of the ordinary though. However, I would say Nakatsuru's scene is probably the best bit of animation in this episode.
My next pick is The One. This is the episode that so many fans have cited as being the absolute best looking episode in all of Dragon Ball Z. And while everyone has a right to their own opinion, I feel like this one is without question one of the best, and that's why it's on this list, and that's Dragon Ball Z episode 179. This is Goku versus Perfect Cell in the Cell games, animated by Studio Cockpit. It's just so good. It's so good. I mean, I can words even describe the amount of quality we get from this episode? That warp Kamehameha at the end of the episode is one of the most beloved moments in the series, and it's all courtesy of guys like Sugimoto, Tamamuro, Umakoshi. Masunaga, and so many others who worked on this one. It's just, lots of episodes in this arc belong on this list, and this is the one that sticks out the most to me, but there's quite a few amazing ones here. Chances are you've already seen this episode a few times, but hey, there's nothing wrong with going back one more time to check it out. Next on the list is Dragon Ball Z episode 231. This was a tough pick because there's a lot of great episodes from the early Buu saga. In fact, the entire Buu saga has amazing animation. For me, this was my favorite one as far as just pure animation goes and action. Goku versus Majin Vegeta is phenomenal. Well, if I'm being honest, there's actually one coming up later, but Relic's already picked it, so I'll let him tell you about that. But when it comes to the early Buu saga, this one really holds up for me because Majin Vegeta versus Goku is one of the first fights that I was able to enjoy with fan subs, because at the time there was no official release for these episodes outside of Japan, and that's the only way I could watch it. But even as a lower quality fan sub goes, you could tell this was special. You could tell it was great. And really the Goku Majin Vegeta fight for a lot of the series was kind of regarded as this mythical thing, and this episode might be why. The animation and the art is fluid, it's vibrant, and it really makes the fight seem that much more tense and impactful. You could feel Goku and Vegeta absolutely wrecking each other. Animation supervisor Kazuya Hisada oversees this project and makes sure it's as good as it can be, and I think it was.
Alright, well, my fourth pick is episode 245. This is the episode where Goku transforms into Super Saiyan 3. This time though, the animation staff that handle this one are completely new to Dragon Ball. This episode would be outsourced to Kino Productions, certainly a much lesser known studio than a lot of the ones we've gone through so far, which makes it also all the more interesting that an entirely new studio would be selected to handle such an important episode. Even so, the supervisor, Ichio Hayashi's work is quite on model for the most part. Naturally though, like for any new studio, they are paired up with a chief animation supervisor just to keep the episode on model. And again, this time being the man himself, Tadayoshi Yamamuro, and his corrections do dominate quite a bit to the point it almost feels like a Shindo Pro episode at times. Even so, you have essentially two great supervisors on the one episode, and as a result, the artwork is quite polished throughout, and Hayashi's more angular touch blends really nicely with Yamamoto's own style. Now, on the directional front, it certainly doesn't miss either, and is the other half of the reason I included this one. The director, Mitsu Hashimoto, creates such a strong sense of scale through the storyboard, such as like with the composition of like the clouds being drawn in, all the symbolism such as with showing Goku as a baby and the Ozaru. All those details go a long way, and overall it's just a very visually compelling episode, definitely one of my favorites. So honestly, when it comes to Studio Cockpit, all of their episodes look great. You could see that before with 179, but 279 is one that especially stands out, and that's definitely in part to having quite a notable director on this episode, Shigeyasu Yamauchi. Now with the supervisor, Keisuke Masunaga, he is quite well known for the rather off-model look to his episodes. Personally, I love it. It's very expressive and dynamic, but most importantly interesting. And like many of the supervisors we've talked about, his corrections are also quite strong and frequent, and so when paired up with Yamauchi, you get easily one of the best looking episodes from Z. Yamauchi is great when it comes to crafting a well choreographed scene. The fight between Goku and Majin Vegeta, or Goku and Janemba in movie 12 are some great examples, and that skill set is certainly present here, and Masunaga's team just completely nails the storyboard and the general vision laid out. It's very well animated and the effects work looks great, and with Yamauchi's love for purple and pink hues thrown in, it's pretty much perfect. Such a great looking episode from start to finish. But yeah, that's the final episode for me. Of course, this is not my channel, so I'm not going to do the outro. So yeah, back over to you, man.
Those have been the 10 best looking Dragon Ball Z episodes. I want to thank Forgotten Relics for stopping by, and I want to thank you for being here. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll talk to you next time.